Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to SODA Series 3 on the topic of engineering management. It's really our pleasure to have you guys here, and I'm today's MC. My name is Stella. So I'd like to ask if there are any engineers, can you raise your hand? Oh yeah, we are very happy to have you here. I admire engineers so much. You guys use the programming language I barely understand and use in my entire life. So can you give yourself a round of applause? We are very happy to have you here. And also, I know some of you guys are an engineer. Can you also raise your hand? Yeah. You guys are also heroes. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at my company, and I know communicate and collaborate with engineers is never an easy thing. So can you guys also put your hands together? I'm proud of you. We're so happy to have you here. So before we started, we are very honored to have here with us a panel of speakers who are leaders of talented engineering teams. They are going to share with us their experience of successful engineering management, including day-to-day decision-making, conflict management, and leaders' influence. After their talks, we will take a short break and come back with a panel discussion. Before we start, I'd like to give a quick shout-out to the event organizer, SODA Labs. SODA Labs is a hardware-as-a-service startup studio from LA, and they are currently partnering with one of the biggest OEM in the world to create cloud-connected digital hardware. So we are very looking forward to this event, and we hope you can get a lot. So let's welcome our first speaker, WeMo CTO Jay. WeMo Scooter provides a new service that combines sharing economy and eco-friendly scooters, which is supported by Taiwanese government, and its over 100,000 users love it. I'm one of the big fans. So WeMo 呢，它提供了一个新形态的共享机车以及环保车的电动车服务。那受到台湾政府支持以外呢，已经有超过10万个用户非常爱它了。So let's put your hands together. Welcome Jay Cheng.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I can see some people are actually from my team, so I'll apologize ahead of time. I'm going to be complaining about you guys a lot, alright? Okay, so just a little bit of background. My name's Jay. I am the CTO of WeMo Scooter. I've done various businesses in the past. I started in manufacturing for computer networking hardware, so I have a lot of experience with working with hardware engineers, QC engineers, production lines. I've also branched out to do car modifications, a company that does car modifications, photography, and currently WeMo. WeMo system is completely cloud-based, including our slides. So connectivity is very important. Without connectivity, WeMo will not operate. Oh, this is slide. Okay, this slide. Yeah. Sorry, this slide has a lot of bells and whistles. So, how about mainly I just like to spend a little bit of time discussing, what WeMo does. So we are a kind of a green transportation company. All of our scooters are electric scooters. You can use your mobile phone, quickly rent one of our scooters, find, rent, operate, return the scooter. It's a completely stationless system. 4 years ago, no one ever heard of this. Now, with the kind of bike sharing, kick scooter sharing companies, it's a little bit more prevalent on what we're doing. Okay, we currently have about 2,500 scooters in Taipei City. We have about 10,000 rentals a day. Our goal is actually to be the #1, okay, customer-loved transportation, method of transportation. That's our company goal. Okay. What makes our company a little bit more special than what I've done in the past is when I used to make computer networking products, well, I still kind of do, but the issue with making computer networking products is that it's a product-based company. When you build products, it's always the next generation of product, the next iteration of hardware. Starting WeMo was very interesting for me because when we switched over to do WeMo, it's a service-based company. We don't have generational product launches. We don't do like scooter version 1, scooter version 2, next year scooter version 3. Our goal is to provide the best means of transportation 10,000 times a day. Okay, so it's a very, very different kind of mentality. It's a very different type of methodology of operating and running a team. So 10,000 rentals a day. Okay. So, I'm here today to share my experiences building WeMo's team, leading the team, directing it, on an engineering level, on just guidance on what direction we're going, and managing the different type of personalities, improving communication, trying to build up strong SOPs and processes inside the company. Okay, I always tell my team that my goal is to develop a team in which when I am removed, you can operate by yourself. That is very hard. It's been 4 years and I'm still running everything. Okay, so when it comes to leading the team, okay, so this is just in general. I try to avoid micromanaging your team. The reason you hire smart people is because they're smart people. Okay? They should know what they're doing. Okay? Choose your team members carefully, and when you don't have to micromanage them. Set clear goals. Okay? This is something I actually learned in WeMo. We don't go off a KPI system anymore. We go off of OKR. I'm not going to go into detail on what OKR is. Do a search for it, research it, understand it. I think it's a much better way to build a successful company than KPIs. Okay. Always communicate clearly what type of company we are. What is our goal? I think every member in your company should know that. Okay, I remember hearing that Amazon's goal is to become the world's #1 customer service company. I was like, I didn't know that was Amazon's goal. It obviously isn't the #1 employment company, right? But #1 customer service, I can see that. I can understand that. When you lead your team, it's always nice to discuss with your team if there's a kind of what their future is in the company. Okay, give them a direction. In WeMo, you can go this way. Some people want to become leaders, other people want to expand on technology. You have to give them the space to grow, or else they'll leave. And the worst thing you can do is train up an engineering team and have them leave in a year, which is common in Taiwan. I'll get into that later. Okay. When you're running your own engineering team, especially in a company like WeMo, people always come up to me and ask, what can we build? Okay, our operations team comes up to say, hey, can we do this? The problem with running your own team is, yeah, we can do anything. Give me the budget, give me the manpower, we can do anything. You want me to build a rocket to go to the moon? We can do that. Okay, but given enough time and resources, it's fine. But you have to avoid those distractions. You really have to focus your team on what needs to be. Focus your team, focus on what needs to be done for the company to be successful. You can think outside the box. Being an engineering manager, you have a broader view of what you're doing than your team members do. And a lot of times your team members are stuck with in-the-box thinking because they don't know what they can change. You as a manager, you know what additional resources you can bring to the table. You should bring those resources to the table. A very common issue that I have when managing our team is we would develop a product up to a certain point, and I go, well, you know what, this doesn't seem like it's the right direction. Why did we not think of this totally different direction? Okay, that is a problem, but because your team members don't have the broader view and the resources that you're looking at, they're stuck within the box thinking. Focus on what you can change and not what you cannot. There's always those moments in engineering where we're like, oh, let's just stop and wait. We can wait for the cheaper connector. Let's just go find a cheaper connector. That's not something I can control. I might be able to find a cheaper connector, I might not be. Why not just give up the connector altogether and go with a different method, different route? Okay. Focus on training your team to understand your decision-making process. Okay. My head of engineering under me in WeMo, when we discuss with our team members things, we're in sync to a point where we repeat ourselves. We don't need to have the same conversation. Like, but if someone asks us the same question, we have the same resulting answers a lot of times. And that's kind of nice. Okay, because he was able to understand my decision-making process and the things that I had to understand, I had to figure out. Okay? So I always tell my team, your goal in the long run is to hack me. Okay? Understand how I operate. If you have goals you want to accomplish and you can figure out how to get them through me, great. Okay? Otherwise, you should work with me to a point where you're ahead of me. Before I even ask the question, you already know the answer. You already answered it. You already figured it out. And that's when I know you're ready to lead your own team. Okay, when it comes to managing teams, a lot of times it's about managing personalities. Focus on having one-on-one meetings with your engineering team. It's hard to schedule time. Okay, so when you're in the car with your engineer, start chatting. That's the one-on-one time. When you're going to a customer meeting and you have time to chat. Talk to your team. Understand what their pain points are, what issues they're encountering in their production process or development process. Rely on your HR department heavily. Okay. Before WeMo, the companies I worked in never had HR departments. We had our accounting department cover HR kind of thing, right? But WeMo actually developed our own HR department, and it's an important department to have. Okay, they can help support you, help understand what your team is suffering, where your team is suffering. Communication, always encourage communication. It's always easy as an engineer to shoot down a bad idea. There's plenty of bad ideas. Okay? But you still have to encourage people to throw them out and to understand them and to try to build up. SOP, again, you have to make sure your team understands what the processes are to get answers. Okay? The worst thing that I think an engineer can fall into is a rut where they feel like they cannot change anything. Okay, like I'm going to my job day in and day out, there's nothing I can do. This is the way things are. Okay, ideally you want to try to get them out of that rut. You want to tell them, if you have a problem, this is the people you talk to. The company's evolving, the company will always change. Nothing is ever perfect. Okay, so the next part I kind of wanted to talk about is just understanding the gap, what I call a gap between different cultures. You have hardware versus software. At WeMo, we developed all our own hardware in-house. We developed all our own software in-house. Okay. Engineering versus everyone else in the company. WeMo's engineering team stands for over a third of the company. So how that third needs to communicate with the other 2/3 of the company. And the biggest gap is between Taiwan and Western cultures. So let's start with the easy stuff. Hardware and software engineering being the easy stuff. So, when you talk about software engineers are used to running like an agile Scrum kind of model. Your destination for developing software is never really that clear. It's kind of fuzzy. With every single sprint, you can change your direction just a little bit. You're always reinventing things, okay? And the background for the engineering team is just a larger variety of that background, right? You have people who studied art in college, and they came out and they said, I can code, and now they're doing iOS apps, right? Which is great. All right, when it comes to hardware engineers, very different background, right? You have traditional milestone-based kind of project management. You use Microsoft Project, you say, this is the due date, and you figure out if you can build something to that due date. You have clearer destinations. If your spec is not clear, you can't fuzzily modify your PCB as it's in production, right? Your destination has to be very, very clear cut. You have fixed iterations, right? Version 1, version 1.1, very, very clear cut. Software, not so clear cut, right? You have more traditional engineers. Okay, hardware engineers, you usually went to college as a hardware engineer, and you came out and you're like, oh man, I should have done software. No, so you have more traditional engineers. You have more traditional engineering background people that are saying, okay, well, I was good at physics, I was good at math, I understand logic, so I'm now a hardware engineer. Bridging the gap between these two cultures is not easy. You can't run the team as one. You can't take your agile scrum and apply it to a hardware engineering team. Okay, so you have to try to balance that. You have to run the team separately. You have to try to balance the workflow of, where the key milestones will be. So I don't have the full solution to this. I'm just saying this is a very big problem that you should be aware of. As you work with your team, you have to understand you have to run the team separately. Okay, don't try mixing your teams together. It doesn't work. An engineer's role in the company. So this is the issue when we say our engineering team versus marketing, accounting, operations. Okay. The first thing is to keep clear communication channels. Okay. In WeMo, we rely heavily on our project management teams to try to keep a clear communication channel between the engineering team and operations or marketing or other teams. Each department should always have representatives come out to try to communicate with the other departments on requirements, specifications, things like that. But the key is, I think, you need to decide who is driving the project. Is this an engineering project? Is this a marketing project? There needs to be a project lead for that project to clearly define what you're doing. This is what I'm going to spend the most time trying to explain, that not everyone in the company is an engineer. Okay, it's very easy for the engineering team to say, you know what, they don't know what they're doing. But we're a startup, nobody knows what you're doing. Okay, so come on, being in startup culture, nobody knows what you're doing. What is the specification? I don't know. Right, like what's the workflow? I'd like someone to rent a scooter using a phone. That was how WeMo was presented to me. Okay, we were at Computex. The CEO, my good friend Jeffrey, came to me and said, hey, I have this idea with 2 other people who aren't engineers. We're all consultants. I'm like, okay, so you know how to tell people to do things, but you can't do things yourself. Okay, got it. And then he goes, okay, so I would like to develop a system where people can kind of do ride sharing. Use a phone and just boop, and the scooter will turn on. You know what my first reaction was? Whoever gets stuck with that job is gonna suck. Right? And then what happens is, I found out that I'm the one stuck with the job because they can't find another CTO that's not willing to take like 60% of the company or something, right? So they come to me and they're like, hey, we already know you, you've already consulted for us for like 4 or 5 months. Why don't you join as a founder? Okay. But if you're asking me at that moment what the specifications of WeMo will be, I have no clue. Okay, we know a general workflow, we know we need an app, we know we need some kind of hardware on the scooter. But this is part of being in a startup, is to try new things, try different things. Okay? So again, talking to your engineering team, making sure they understand that nothing is final. Okay? One of the problems is a lot of engineering people that you end up hiring into your startup used to work at software companies that used to take cases, right? When you take a case, it's very easy. Someone draws up the specifications, tells you exactly what you need to do, and you take that and you do it, right? But being part of a startup team that's developing something in-house, a lot of times you're trying something completely new. So nobody knows what they're doing. Everyone needs to help each other out, okay? You have to tell your departments that engineering has a certain culture. The culture is you worship logic and workflows, right? You worship SOPs, you make sure that everything goes according to a certain data structure, plan, everything. That's not the way other departments work. Okay? Marketing works off creativity. Engineering does not work off creativity. Being creative in engineering does not necessarily help you, right? So you have different cultures. You need to make sure these cultures, you can bridge this gap, and you bridge that through communication. You bridge that through educating your team that not everyone's an engineer. Okay, the cultural gap. This is the big one, because this is the one that doesn't hit you right away, right? You come to Taiwan, you're like, I'm from the US. Yay! Okay, everyone's nice to you. You know, you start working with everyone, they're all very polite. You know, everyone does their job very well. But then you start realizing that they're just doing what you're saying. You say A, they do A. You say B, they do B. And then you're like, wait, I hired you to give me feedback. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. But that's the way Taiwan culture is, right? Taiwan's traditional startup is, I have a PhD, I came back, I'm really smart, I'm gonna start a startup. That's not the American way of starting up. That's not the Western way of doing startups, right? The Western way is, I have an idea, and let's do it. So, the independent thinking part, trying to get your engineering team, try to feed you, to try to make you a smarter person, make your team a smarter team, is not easy. Again, the problem comes down to when you're running a team in Taiwan, people actually like being micromanaged. I have engineers that left my company because they said I didn't give them the pat on the back and tell them that they did this in the right way. I'm like, so you wanted someone to review your work and tell you you did a good job? He said, yes. I'm like, well, does it work? Yes. Is it working? Yes. Did it fulfill the specifications? Yes. Good job. That wasn't enough, all right? What they're used to culturally is how the school system works. You have a teacher teaches you what you do. They give you an assignment, you do the assignment, and the teacher tells you you did a good job. They give you a grade, right? When you run a Western team, it's very different. When you run a Western team, your biggest issue as manager is, how do I get everyone to agree on something and move forward and stop yelling at each other in the meeting room? A Taiwanese team, an Asian team, it's difficult to get them to talk, right? The most common thing I have is I come up with an idea and I go, hey, you know what? Why don't we do this? And someone else goes, I thought of that. And I'm like, good for you. Why didn't you say anything? Why did I have to think of it? Right? So one of the things is you really have to try to get your team to open up. And that is really hard. Okay? Because they have this mentality that you're the manager. You're the CTO of the company. So if I tell you anything, like I'm like wrath of God down on you, or something like that. I'm like, I'm not. I'm just as dumb as you are. Don't worry. Okay? Work with me. Okay? So again, working in a team. Right? My ideal team is I'm the dumbest person in the room. That's the best team I would like to have. Okay? Hard work isn't just working hard. Okay? This is a common misconception here. If I do more hours, okay, if I'm in the office more, then I'm doing a great job. Okay? You have to ask for efficiency. Is there a waste in your work? Right? So you can't just say, okay, I put in a lot of work, so it's good. No. You have to start talking to your team about efficiency and how you want to work. Right? Because a lot of things, like at least on the manufacturing side, when I do manufacturing products, the solution to everything is working really hard. Right? Like, okay, we messed up on these boxes, so everyone goes to the back and let's change the boxes out before we ship. Right? Well, why don't we figure out why we messed up on the boxes in the first place and not make that mistake every single time? Right? So trying to curb that efficiency is again, it's a difficult process. Trying to teach Western thought into someone who has had 28 years of Taiwan education and cultural experience is almost impossible. Okay, but what you do is you really have to build your team from the ground up. Communicate a lot, make sure everyone understands they can speak up. Sometimes they can speak up and they overspeak, they say too much. Okay, you have to understand that's just part of trying to bridge that gap. Okay, but I think this is always the biggest cultural shock item when you start running teams here. At first you're like, everything's going great. Until it's not. And then you're like, what happened? And then someone would say, you told me to do this, so I just did it. And then you go, well, didn't I tell you that the goal was, let's say, to satisfy the consumer experience? And they go, yeah. So, and I go, when you're building this, do you think as a customer you would be happy with this? No. How many hours did we invest on this? 500. Okay. How did things go so far off track? Communication. This will happen, okay? So this is just something again, you really have to be mindful of. If you come from a Western background, people here are not thinking the same way you are. Employee retention, when you start working here and you start hiring your own team, you will realize that there's a common goal for all engineers, and that's to go through 10 companies over 20 years. That's like a KPI. If I didn't transfer between 10 companies or swap companies in under 2 years, I failed. I'm like, especially as an engineer, because then your network's wider, you gone through a lot of stuff. That's a mentality here. Okay, trying to train employee retention, trying to say there is value staying in your startup for more than a year, it takes time, it takes effort. Okay, as a manager, you have to realize you have to spend time on this. If you've decided I'm going to do a startup, I'm going to be an engineer manager, you have to realize 50% of your time is not in engineering. It's in running your team. It's in making sure your team's happy. Okay? And it's making sure that your team sees a future that they will stay. So again, cultivate the culture. Spend time. Create an environment that can produce strong engineers. Encourage exchange of thought. Cultivate engineers from within the team. That helps your team retention part. If people see a future that says, if I stay at this company, I will have a future as a manager. I will have upgrades, I will have, that's something that's key. It's always easy to say, I'll hire someone from outside. But it's much harder to train leaders from within your team. Hire based off of your company culture and talent. If you find someone really, really talented, but doesn't fit in your engineering team's culture, don't hire them. You will spend a lot of your time managing that person. It's much easier to hire someone less talented that fits in your culture better. Keeping the team healthy is just as important as creating the product. Okay, when you're building against a competitor, especially as a startup, your team's much smaller. You have less resources, right? So the one thing you can provide is a healthier work environment, a healthier team environment than the 1,000 person company that's competing against you, that you're trying to compete against, right? They might have more complete processes, but everyone's treated like a robot. You're a startup, I have one-on-one time. Your input is valuable. Okay, so this is just something, if I have engineering talks, I usually just kind of slap this on the back and say, looking back on the last 3 years of development at WeMo. Okay, so we launched our scooter system. When we looked at the first scooter from Kimco, that was in like October. By the following year, we launched in October, our full system was complete. That includes hardware for controlling the scooter, back-end to handling rentals, 2 applications, a service application to go out and swap batteries, all in 1 year. My engineering team was 4 people. Okay? Rapid development to prove a business model. We had to prove that people wanted to rent scooters, right? So we did very, very fast development to make this happen. We then spent the next 2 years paying for it. Okay? What happens is, when you have launch service, right? It's kind of like building an airplane. So when you first start, you go, I have some tools in the garage, I have some paper, some wood, I made an airplane, and it took off, right? And now the service is running. When we both started, we had 30 scooters, we had like 5 rides a day. Okay, we took off. Then you start realizing that, oh no, my plane needs to slowly go from this paper airplane to a Boeing 777. Right? Can I take the service offline to make that happen? No. Okay, so basically restructuring an online service is like trying to repair or upgrade a plane in midair. The wings aren't good enough, let's tear the wings off. We gotta put the new wings on before we hit the ground. Okay, so again, it depends on how your company is structured, what product you're trying to develop. But you always have to remember that rapid development is great. If I were to go back and do it again, I'd still do it the same way, because we had to prove the business model ahead of time. But you just have to remember that it's kind of like taking credit out of the bank. You got to pay it back, right? So, that Windows server that was running your back end, back office, the 30 scooters, not good enough. For 100 scooters, for 1,000 scooters, for 10,000 rentals a day. Okay? All right, so that's basically my talk. Thank you.
Thanks for the sharing from Jay. Let's welcome our second speaker, the former engineering director